Welcome once again. This is Pinnacle Professional College, and today I'll be bringing you another session on the strategic case study analysis for Bazar Company Limited. We've been through a couple of sessions, 2 sessions so far, where we are going through a step-by-step analysis of the case, of the preceding information to understand the context of the case. Now, if you don't have a paper, please grab a paper, a pen, and also grab your preceding information so that you can follow with me. In our previous session, we got to part 2. Which was only page 2 of this long preceding information. So we'll be continuing today. So let's continue. I'll start with the last sentence on page 2 and then continue to page 3. So we are told that one of the company objectives states that Bazar aims to offer our staff outstanding opportunities in terms of personal career development and remuneration relative to other companies, and they show concern for the welfare of individuals. Now, we discussed a little bit in our prior session, or even extensively in our prior sessions, about a human resource strategy or a personal strategy. Now, every personal strategy would comprise of these 4 or 5 things that I'm about to mention, which is something you need to know to understand HR or human resource properly. Now, Bazar as a company is aiming that they will give career development opportunities, they will incentivize their employees, and also show interest in their well-being. And also, if they have to develop them or train them in some way, they'll be willing to pay the fees for some of that. So these are the 4 or 5 areas that I've come to mention when it comes to human resource strategy. Please keep this in mind. Number 1 is acquisition or recruitment. Number 2 is retention, right? Number 3 is training and development. Number 4 is remuneration, right? And number 5 is focusing on the general well-being of employees. So number 1 is what? Acquisition or recruitment. So acquisition is basically you getting employees into the organization, going through the HR process of getting employees into the organization, recruiting them from other companies, things like that. Then you have retention, ensuring that the employees you've recruited into the company are retained in the company and continue to work with the company, right? So that's retention, retaining the employees. Number 3 is remuneration or incentivization. So remuneration or incentivization, one of the key things under this is because you need to reward people financially and non-financially for their service as employees, remuneration becomes key, right? And so you need to understand what the remuneration package you give to each employee to satisfy or meet their needs based on the service that they offer to you as a company. Number 4, I think I mentioned training and development. Training and development as well. That's very, very key. You need to develop and train your employees to ensure that they are upskilled to perform the tasks that you are requiring them to perform. That's very, very crucial. And number 5, focusing on the general well-being of the employee. So there are other admin HR tasks that are key to ensuring that there's a healthy relationship between the company and its employees. Now, the next paragraph says that the Unitarist philosophy is evident in much of the audiovisual material produced by the company, right? Now, what is a Unitarist philosophy? What is a Unitarist philosophy? First off, before I even define what a Unitarist philosophy is, I would like you to understand that there are fundamentally 2 different kinds of philosophies when it comes to team building, employee engagement, and employee management, right? So number one is what we call Unitarism, which is the Unitarist philosophy. And number two is what we call Pluralistic philosophy or pluralism, right? So number one is what? The Unitarist philosophy. Number two is the Pluralist philosophy. Here we are being told that Bazar's philosophy is Unitarist. So what is, I'll explain both of them and then I'll come to this. So what is a Unitarist philosophy? A Unitarist philosophy is basically a perspective that emphasizes the shared interests of all members of an organization, right? It emphasizes the shared interests of all members of the organization. Now, so what does this mean? What does this mean? It basically means that a unitarist approach will consist of all members in the organization sharing the same interest and being homogeneous, right? So they are sharing the same interests, sharing the same interest. So there's a shared interest when it comes to a unitarist philosophy. Now, if that's going to confuse you a bit, look at the word unitarist. Uni means one, right? Uni means one, so one in a sense. So unitarist means one interest, one goal. So all members of the organization have a shared interest, which is like one interest, right? And you also have the pluralist, Pluralist, a pluralist philosophy. This is a perspective of an organization that is made up of divergent subgroups having their own legitimate interests. So pluralists, they come from the word plural, right? So which means there are many subgroups who have their own interests in the organization. So when you look at these two philosophies, you look at them from these perspectives. Number one, I've defined and shown you the difference between a unitarist and a pluralist philosophy. I said the unitarists, they have a shared interest and shared goal. The pluralists, they have divergent subgroups that have their own legitimate interests. Now, when you look at the goals and interests of the unitarist philosophy, they are shared interests and goals. But for the pluralists, since we have divergent subgroups, there may be conflicting goals and interests. There will be conflicting goals and interests. And now, how do these two philosophies view conflicts? For the unitarist philosophy, because there's a shared interest and goal, conflicts are often viewed as dysfunctional. Conflicts are viewed as a problem. They are viewed as a problem because everyone has a shared interest. Now, for the pluralist philosophy, conflicts are acknowledged and they are somewhat desirable, or they are even desirable. So these are some of the differences when it comes to the unitarist and the pluralist philosophy. Another key difference between the unitarist and the pluralist philosophy is that the unitarist philosophy has what we call a paternalistic approach. A paternalistic approach. What's a paternalistic approach? It comes from the word paternal, right? Or fathering, right? So the unitarist approach, it encourages a shared interest. And because of that, it expects the loyalty of the employees. So it's like a father looking over children, right? It expects the loyalty of the employees. However, for the pluralistic approach or perspective or philosophy, it does not have a paternalistic approach. There's no paternalistic approach because remember, we said that there are divergent subgroups who have their own interests. And because of that, they do not expect the loyalty of their employees. They do not expect the loyalty of their employees. In Bazar Company Limited's case, we see that there's a unitarist philosophy. And what we are being told here is that it is evident in much of the audiovisual material produced by the company, with regular references to being vital members of the team. So you see the expression, vital members of the team. Vital members, that's a shared goal and interest. Now, I do not want to skip over the material that's produced by the company. It's audio and visual. Audio and visual. And this is very, very important. And this is something you might quickly skip if you are not reading the pre-scene information in detail, audio and visual. So Bazar Company Limited has done a good job of making sure that the material that they are producing appeals to the eye and appeals to the ear. Audio for the ear, visual for the eye. You need to deploy these two channels to effectively communicate with your people. So there's regular references to being vital members of the team and to the ethos of all working together for the good of the company as a whole. So this is a more shared interest, shared goals of the company. For example, one of the company's induction videos encourages staff to buy into the benefits offered by the company. So it's even going deeper to give you examples of these shared interests and goals. If staff work hard, look smart, and maintain strict hygiene and high service standard, it is suggested that Bazar will be able to ensure that customers receive quality products and treatment as well as value for money. And this will then create secure employment, good promotion, etc. In addition, the fact that staff can see relatively opportunities of promotions, at least to the level of junior management, serves to reinforce the feeling that working together can present a way forward for the staff and the company alike. Now, again, we are seeing a bit of human resource strategy in the last sentence, right? Once staff are able to, when I was talking about human resource strategy, one of the things I talked about is training and development. And as part of development, one of the things you need to look at is career development. When staff or employees do not see the next opportunity, the next level that they could get to, it is quite demotivating for them, right? So the fact that the staff can see relative opportunities of promotion or growth, at least to the level of junior management, serves to motivate them, right? But what Bazar Company Limited would love to do is to even give their employees the opportunity to rise to even senior management. That will reinforce the feeling that working together, and working for Bazar Company Limited, create opportunities. So please, all in this paragraph, what's key for you to understand is the Unitarist philosophy and the Pluralist philosophy and how it operates and why Bazar Company Limited seems to be using what we call the Unitarist philosophy. Now, as to whether they need to change that philosophy or modify it to an extent, that's something that might probably unfold as we go deeper and deeper into the case. So this is very crucial, right? In this, I'll try to understand the advantages and disadvantages of the Unitarist and the Pluralist philosophy. Very, very important. On the other hand, this benign image of teamwork and cooperation makes the right controls that are everted within the company, especially in the management hierarchy. The benign image of teamwork and cooperation makes the right controls that are everted within the company, especially in the management hierarchy. There are strict formulas for the amount of labor that can be employed in any one period, although store managers are allowed some flexibility. All right, so what does this even mean? What does this even mean? Because of this shared interest and shared goals, and I'm not surprised that they are adopting a unitarist philosophy, because remember that the organizational structure of Bazar Company Limited is family-centric. And when there's a center, right, the center would want to have a shared interest across the organization to be able to exert their authority across the organization, right? So we are being told here that the image of teamwork and cooperation, ensures that the right controls are in place. And there's also a strict regulation on the amount of labor that can be employed in any one period. So this is what we call staffing, how to staff employees, how to staff employees. So there are strict formulas for the amount of labor that can be employed. Now, who determines the strict formula? That's a key question I'll be asking myself. Who determines the strict formula? Because we need to understand that we need to understand who is determining this formula. And even if this formula works, regional managers also make spot visits to each of the store on a regular but unscheduled basis. Now, that's very, very important, as regional managers ensure oversight over their retail stores or the stores that they are looking at. It's important that they make unannounced visits. And through these unannounced visits, they are able to check the condition of the store. What's the general performance in the store? What's the general performance in the store? What's happening in the store? What are the queue lengths? What's the customer service like? How has the store been laid out? And some of these unannounced visits, what it does is it keeps managers on their toes, because they do not know when the regional managers will show up. And so there's always a need for high quality service. There's always a need for high quality service. So this is very, very important and quite interesting, because Bazar Company Limited has an ethos of good customer service, and it's important to ensure that at all instances, disciplinary standards are precisely laid down by the company rule book, and there are specific instructions about standards of cleanliness and dressing. Indeed, the desire to project a high quality image is central to much of the activity at the store, right? So the company has a rule book on how to discipline people when they go wrong. And it's interesting, one of the key things that you need to understand about the retail space is how the store is designed and laid out. Now, one of the key things you want to avoid is theft, right? So what Bazar Company has done as a security measure is to install video cameras in the sales areas to deter any form of theft, and to ensure that, at least there's some record of events, just in case anything happens. And the interesting thing is that because the video cameras are installed, it acts as a form of surveillance over the staff. But as to whether staff would feel free to work and free to offer service, all right, that's also another thing, because if you have video cameras on you 24/7, and you feel like you're always being watched, it might be demotivating for some people, and that might not let them bring out their natural selves. their natural selves. But that's a case for another day. So there are cameras there that are installed as a security measure to ensure that there's nothing like customer theft and to record events as they happen in the stores. So very, very important. What we've discussed here is around staffing. Staffing. Now, staffing is basically the assignment of labor to tasks. Now, we are told that there's a strict formula for the amount of labor that can be employed in any one period. All right, so what I would be wanting to know are, possible staffing challenges. Are there times when, they do not have the necessary employees to carry out tasks or to serve in the stores? So number one, that's staffing. Number two, the unannounced visits by the regional managers, which serve as a way to check the stores and to ensure that they are offering the quality service that's needed. Now, in case there's no quality service being offered, there are disciplinary standards that are laid down by the rule book. By the rule book. The company has a rule book. Now, let's move on to employee agreements. Employee agreement. Bazar has separate but identical agreements with two trade unions that allows for individuals to be represented at the workplace. So what's a trade union? What's a trade union? I would try to understand what a trade union is. Just to, just in case you might not be aware of what a trade union is. A trade union is basically a composition of individual workers, professionals, past workers, students, or, it's basically a group or a membership-based organization whose membership is mainly made up of workers. It's a union of workers who have come together to help to fight for their own interests. The agreement came into effect in 1992 at the beginning of the Ghana Fourth Republic. So this is quite a long time after Bazar Company Limited even came into being, right? So the timing, 1992, and it appears that the reason for recognizing two unions as opposed to one, which many of the competitors do, owed much to the existing packets of union membership in different parts of the country. So there's an agreement, their employee agreement. So I've seen that this pre-scene information has taken its time to go through human resource, people management, employee engagement, trade unions, very, very much. And so I'll be, going into the exam, I'll be studying a lot or refreshing my memory on human resource, trade unions, employee agreements, human resource strategy, things like that, things like that. And that will be one of my key areas that I'll try to focus on. And there are different human resource models and theories. So that's something maybe you might want to take a look at. But if we have more time, I might go through some of them. So one of the key, there's a key human resource model, which is called the 5Ps model. I don't want to go into that now, but I'll try to understand what the human resource strategy is and the whole people culture at Bazar Company Limited. So fortunately, there are trade unions, right, who are able to fight for the interests of of the employees. Now, one crucial thing that you need to notice is that collective bargaining is not catered for in the agreements. So that's interesting. So even though there are trade unions, as to whether these trade unions are effective, that remains, a big question, because it looks like they are not. There's an agreement, but collective bargaining is not catered for. Workplace union organization is weak, with little more than 11% of all the eligible employees actually in the union. So, number one, collective bargaining is not catered for. Number two, participation is very, very low in these unions. And the unions are finding it difficult to persuade people to become representatives. And those who do often lack experience of unionism. Okay, so let's understand trade unions a bit and how they work. Let's understand trade unions a bit. Who are they? I already explained who they are, but I would like to, touch on what they do, what they try to fight for, what they represent. So a trade union will typically look after employee interest at work by doing things like negotiating agreements with employers on pay and conditions. They will discuss big changes like large-scale redundancy. So if there's a large-scale redundancy coming, a trade union will step in and try and discuss that with the employer. Discussing members' concerns with employers. So if the members or the employees have any concerns, they take it to the employer and discuss it or hash it out with them. Going with members to disciplinary and grievance meetings. So another thing that a trade union does is to go with employees to disciplinary meetings and grievance meetings. It's very, very important. Very, very important. So these are some of the interesting things that trade unions do. So one of the key things, because one of the problems I see here is that Bazar Company Limited, even though they have agreements, the trade unions are not that effective. The trade unions are not that effective. So what can we do to increase the effectiveness of the trade unions? What can we do to up the trade union effectiveness or participation, right? Or participation. So number one of the things you can do to ensure trade union participation is what we call sensitization. Right? Sensitization, letting employees know the benefits of trade unions, letting them know what the benefits of trade unions are, because people buy into things that they know what benefits them, So that's one of the key things to do to sort of get the ball rolling on getting employees to participate, right? Also, it's a problem that, some of these employees lack experience of unionism, but people can always be trained and helped to do these things, right? Now, let's move on to the last paragraph. Although there's no provision for collective bargaining with employees, this pre-scene information talks a lot about human resource, people, staffing. So I'll definitely take a look at it. So, although there's no provision for collective bargaining with employees, and that's a huge downside for me, in my opinion, in terms of the employee side. Collective bargaining helps, right? Sometimes you need a centralized front to be able to bargain with the employer. Although there's no provision for collective bargaining with employers, it was agreed in 2019 that a general welfare committee structure could be set up between Bazar and the appropriate unions at area level if union membership exceeds a certain threshold. Now, it's been agreed that a general welfare committee would be set up. That is, if participation increases. If participation increases. So one of the things you would want to increase definitely would be participation. Management was keen to initiate the GWC structure because a number of similar problems kept on recurring in various branches at the same time, and it was felt that these were better resolved at areas rather than national level. So the General Welfare Committee would be sort of an intermediary between Bazar Company Limited and the employees, right? Because it was intended to resolve problems at the local level. Resolve problems at the local level, which is very, very key and very, very important, that you're able to resolve all the problems at the local level rather than trying to solve each and every problem at the national level. So let's go back and do a quick recap of this page and some of the key issues that are being defined, because that's very important for you to understand. We talked about the Unitarist and the Pluralist philosophy, and you need to understand what that means and what that implies for the culture of an organization and for, basically for the way of life in an organization. The way of life in an organization. So in the Mckinsey 7S model, one of the things you'd see is that so Mckinsey 7S model is basically 7 S's, right? So you have strategy, structure, systems, staff, skills, etc. So basically 7 S's. One of them is shared values. Shared values. And in the Unitarist philosophy, there are shared interests and goals, which we talked about, right? And as opposed to the pluralist philosophy, where there are divergent groups in the organization. And, people have their own legitimate interests. Now, we cannot talk about HR without talking about performance management. We cannot talk about HR without talking about performance management, right? So how does Bazar Company Limited as a company appraise the performance of its employees? That's something I'd be keen to know. And another thing I also like to know is how the human resource strategy aligns with the overall strategy of the organization. So these are some of the concepts that I'll be detailing more and more. I would study extensively on human resource or refresh my memory on it, at least just to have a fair view. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. In another session, I'll be moving on to page 4. Page 4, where we'll be diving into, other things as well. So thank you very much for watching and have a good day. Bye-bye.